Hi, welcome to Hoop-De-Doo. Today we're going to learn how to make a hoop and what is the right size hoop for you. So we're going to start with the tubing. And basically you can buy it at Home Depot or Lowe's, or if you have a home improvement store near where you live, try there. And usually it comes in 100-foot rolls. Sometimes you can find it in 50-foot rolls. And it usually runs about $20 to $30. And out of a 100-foot roll you can get for anywhere from 8 to 10 hoops, depending on the size of the hoop you make. So we're going to talk a little bit about the irrigation tubing. And it's black, and it comes in different sizes. The biggest, well, not the biggest size, but it does come in 1-inch diameter tubing. And this is what it looks like. And the diameter of the tubing on this one is 3/4 inch, and you can see the diameter of it. And it comes in two different sizes. It comes in 160 psi and 100 psi. And the 160 psi is going to be heavier, make a heavier hoop. The 100 psi is going to make a lighter weight hoop. They also have 1/2-inch tubing. This is 3/4 inch, the first one, and this is 1/2-inch tubing. Okay, which means the diameter of the tubing is 1/2 inch, and the diameter of the tubing on the 3/4 is 3/4 inch. So the 1/2-inch tubing is a lot lighter weight than the 3/4 inch, and you can tell the difference in size. It's quite a bit of difference. And depending on the hoop that you want to make, you would use either one of these. Okay, so let's start with the size of the hoops. This was my first hoop, and as you can see, when it's sitting on the floor, and I know you can't see my feet, but you can see where it comes to me. It comes a little bit up to my waist, above my waist, and the size of this, the diameter of the hoop, is 42 inches. This was my first hoop. I used it for everything, including hand hooping, everything. And so this hoop is 3/4 inch tubing. It's the bigger tubing, and it's 160 psi. So it's really heavy. When you are hooping with it, it's going to be good for body hooping, if you're waist hooping, anything that's on your body, because the hoop moves slower, and it gives you more time to think about the movement of your body compared with the hoop. So this is good. The heavier and bigger hoops for beginners is good for body hooping. Anything, waist, hips, knees, any type of hooping on the body. And with this hoop too, you can expect to have a lot of soreness and bruising. If you're waist hooping, probably around your waist. When I first started, I had a lot of bruising on my knees, everywhere. It looked like I was abused. But so you might want to keep that in mind. If you do get bruising with the heavier hoop, then try taking a few days off and then maybe coming back to it later. And you'll find that your body will get used to the soreness and the bruising and will eventually stop bruising. Okay, so that's the heavy hoop. You can also make the heavy hoop in a smaller size, a smaller diameter of the hoop. So this one comes down below my waist, so this is a little bit smaller hoop. It's still the 3/4 inch, 160 psi, or 100 psi. This is 100 psi. And do a smaller diameter hoop and a little bit lighter weight in the same diameter tubing. So this is 3/4 inch tubing, and it's about 39-inch diameter of the hoop, and it comes a little bit below my waist. And so it can be, if you don't want such a big sized hoop as the big black one. Okay, so that's one alternative. Also, you can make whatever size diameter you want. Okay, so this is a 1/2 inch diameter tubing, and you can see the difference. It is, let me see if I can get so you can see it. So you can see that the 1/2 inch tubing is smaller than the 3/4 inch, of course. Okay, so the 1/2 inch tubing is the same diameter hoop, as the 3/4 inch, but it's just going to be lighter weight because the diameter of the tubing is 1/2 inch rather than 3/4 inch. Okay, and it's a lot easier on your hands when you're hand hooping, but you might find that when you're hand hooping, you find it hitting the ground sometimes, and that sort of interferes with the hooping. So you might want to think about a 1/2 inch hoop if you get to that, when you get to that stage. You might want to think about a smaller diameter hoop for the hand hooping. And this is what I use with the twin hooping when I hoop with 2 hoops. It's still the 1/2 inch diameter tubing, still 1/2 inch diameter. See if you can see that. These are both the same, but the diameter of the hoop, as you can see, this red one is smaller than the blue one. So the blue one comes just a little bit below my waist, and the red one comes a lot below my waist. It comes, let's see if I can move back and you can see, it comes down to my hips. Okay, so this smaller hoop is 31 inches in diameter, and it's 1/2 inch tubing. Okay, so depending on what you want to do with the hoop, you would make whatever size fits what you want to do. Okay, so this is good. Also, if you start with a heavier black hoop, if you start with a heavier black one, then you're going to find that at some point you are going to want to change to a lighter hoop. And that's graduating to a lighter hoop because you're getting better at the hooping. The better you get, the more you're going to want a lighter weight hoop. Okay, so it's easier with the lighter weight hoops to do the lifts, and hand hooping is a lot easier. Especially if you have osteoporosis, if you're starting out with the hand hooping, I would recommend the lighter weight hoop and smaller diameter if you're starting with hand hooping. Okay, because it's easier on your wrists, and if you have a lot of pain, it's a whole lot easier for you. If you're starting out and you have osteoporosis and you want to do the body hooping, anything on the body, waist hooping, shoulder hooping, any of that, then you're going to want to try the heavier one first. If you can do the body hooping with the heavy one, then you want to move gradually down to a lighter weight hoop, and perhaps smaller diameter in hoop also. Okay, so we're going to start making the hoop, and you'll see how to make your own. Okay? Okay, so to start making the hoop, we're going to take our roll of tubing, and you're going to pick up the end of it, and many times it'll have a cap on the end. In about the first foot of the tubing, now mine has been cut before because I only have a partial roll, but from the end of the tubing to about that far into it, it'll be just straight, and you want to cut that piece off, because if you don't, it'll make part of your hoop really straight and not curved. So you want to cut maybe this much off, and you'll be able to see the straightness. Mine is pretty much curved because I've already been cutting on it. Okay, so to measure how big a hoop you want, it depends on if you want it to come to your waist, a little bit above or below, or exactly where you want it. It's a matter of personal preference. So you pick up the end of the hoop, of the tubing, and you want to not get tangled up in it. And you want to hold it up to you to where you think you might want the end of it. Okay, so you set it on the floor, and you're going to sort of try to put the end that's already cut over to where you want it, and you can sort of hold it up to you and move it back and forth to see how big you want it. And I think for this one, I want it right about here, and I already put some red tape on it. So what I'm going to do is I bought some tubing cutters, and these are really, really great. If you're going to make a lot of hoops, I think it's worth it if you're just going to make a couple hoops. Because you don't have to use a saw and cut the tubing. It's just really simple. You just cut it with these tube cutters, and it's really clean. No tube dust, none of that. Okay, so these are well worth the investment. And again, you can get them at Home Depot or Lowe's, and I think they cost about $7. I'm thinking. So try these. They are fantastic. And you'll know after you've cut a few with a saw, you'll really appreciate these. Okay, so what you do is you put the cutters around where you want to cut it. And I always put the blade on the top where I'm cutting. I guess it doesn't really matter. And you just start pushing, and you've got it cut in like, what, 5 seconds. Okay, so now you have your hoop, okay, and now we're going to connect it, and for that we need a connector. Okay, so this is 3/4 inch tubing, so we use a 3/4 inch connector, and the connectors look like this, and they are look like plastic, and they have a little thing in the center, and they're 3/4 inch. Okay, and you can again find these at Home Depot or Lowe's, and they will be right where the tubing is. Okay, so what we're going to do is, if you have a hair dryer at home, that will work also. I have a heat gun, and it works a lot quicker. So what we're going to do is we're going to heat up one end of the tubing, okay, and then stick the connector in halfway up to this. We're going to stick it in up to this line here, this line, okay, and so it'll go like that. Okay, so we're going to heat it up, and if you have a heat gun, you want to be careful not to heat it up too much, because if you do, then it will distort the tubing and melt it. Okay, so a hairdryer works pretty well, actually, so if you have a hairdryer at home, try that. Okay, and I like to put on gloves that have a little bit of grip, because it gets really hot when you have to push the connector in. So my gloves have a little bit of grip on them, okay? And it keeps my hands from sliding on the tubing, so I can push it in easier. Okay? So we're going to heat it up, one end, okay? And you just want to go around, just go around it and heat it up that way, okay? So here we go. So you're just heating up the outside of the tubing on the end, just the outside of the tubing, okay? And on the 3/4 inch tubing, the walls of the tubing are a little bit thicker if it's 160 psi. So you might want to do it just a little bit longer than you would for a 100 psi on a 3/4 inch tubing, because the 100 psi, the walls of the tubing are going to be a little bit thinner. Okay, so you want to be careful when you're heating it, not to heat the 100 psi too long, because it will melt it. Okay, so I'm going to try sticking the connector in now. So you just stick it in and you push. And sometimes I'm not always strong enough, so I will do it down on the floor and push. Put this part of the connector flat on the floor and then push, and it will go in all the way. It'll go in all the way to that little line halfway through. Okay? Then you're going to do the same thing with the other end of the tubing. You're going to heat it up, and then you're going to stick it in and connect the two. Okay? Okay, so we have the second end of the hoop that we need to get into the connector. Okay, so we're going to heat it up, same as we did with the other one. and I'm going to try and let you see what I'm actually doing here. So you're just going to heat it up around the outside of the hoop. And remember that the 3/4 inch tubing, this tubing, is a little bit thicker. The walls of it are a little bit thicker than the 100 psi. This is 160 psi. So the 100 psi is going to be thinner walls in the tubing, so you want to be careful if you're using a heat gun not to heat it up too much because it'll distort the end and it'll melt the tubing. On the 160 psi, which is what this is, you can heat it up a little bit more than the other one because it takes longer for it to distort and melt. Okay, so you want to heat it up, and if you have trouble getting the tubing into the connector or the connector into the tubing, how about that? If you have trouble doing that, if you have osteoporosis and it's really hard, maybe try to find somebody to help you. And especially if you have pain in your wrists, okay, you want to find someone to help you. And definitely use gloves because the tubing gets really hot if you're trying to hold it with your hands and push it in. So be really careful that you don't burn yourself on it. Okay? So I think that this is enough for this one, and I'm going to try doing it, and let's hope. Keep your fingers crossed that I can get the connector in, okay? So it went in really well, okay? And what I'm going to do is hold it. Let's see if you can see. I'm going to hold it sort of pushing down so that it looks smooth. And then I'm just going to hold it a bit here until it cools off. And then it'll be set. Okay, but you don't want to let it bounce back because it'll have a little bump here if you do. So you want to wait till it gets, and I like to hold it with my hand, and if you have gloves on, that works really well. Don't do this without gloves, okay, because you'll burn your hand. So you're going to wait till it cools off, and then you're going to start taping. Okay, so that's our next step. Okay, did your hoop get cool? What we're going to do now is we're going to tape it. And I start with the seam where the two ends of the hoop meet. And let's talk a little bit about tape. When I first started hooping, especially with the body hooping, I had a lot of trouble body hooping. And it took me a long time to learn how to body hoop. So I did a lot of research on different tapes, and there are fancy tapes out there. There are holographic tapes, really shiny, sparkly stuff that's really pretty, and I tried those, and the hoop kept slipping off down my body. Okay, so I started doing more research. I found out about gaffer's tape, and gaffer's tape has a little bit of texture to it, but it still tends to, this is gaffer's tape, the red tape. It still tends to want to slide down off of your body and you lose it easier. And it's a little bit frustrating when you first start hooping. So I discovered, and there are all kinds of websites you can go to. There's Identitape. There are tons of tape places where you can go to and look at the different tapes and see what you like best. Okay, so I discovered athletic tape. And athletic tape is what they use to wrap their knees and things with sports. Okay, and I found it at Dick's Sporting Goods. And it comes in colors. It comes in red and blue and purple and all different kinds of colors. It's a little bit wider than the other tapes. Gaffer's tape and some of the sparkly tapes and stuff are a lot narrower. So you can see the difference between them. Okay, and but the athletic tape really adds friction because it is cotton, and it really adds friction with the hoop and your body, so that it is a lot less frustrating when you're starting out to use the athletic tape. And it's sticky too. Okay, you don't want to get the wrap the athletic wrap that doesn't have the adhesive on it. You want the one that has the adhesive, okay? So that's what I still use on my hoops, okay? I have a couple sparkly ones, but I just prefer the athletic tape, okay? So what I usually do is I take the gaffer's tape, and I like to have something substantial here on the seam, okay, so it doesn't interfere with your hooping. So I'll take the gaffer's tape, and you just want to take and start it a little bit here, and then you're going to take it and center it with the seam. You're going to center it with the seam and put it right over the seam of where the two ends meet. And then you're going to leave the tape on the hoop, and you're going to bring it up around. And once a round of it is good. If you want to do two rounds of it, that's fine too. So this is what you're doing, and you're going to cut it. Okay? So you cut that piece off, and then what you have, it looks like a piece of red tape on the seam. Okay? So we're going to start taping the hoop now. And I do better sitting down taping it. It's a little bit easier. Okay, so you take your tape, and if you're using the athletic tape, it's a little bit wider. So you want to put it on at an angle. And so you're just going to take a bit of it and start it and put it at an angle on your hoop. And you're going to start where our seam is on the hoop. So you're going to put it at an angle, and then keep the roll of tape close to the hoop, and you're going to go around the hoop and keep going around the hoop, and use your other hand, your left hand or your dominant hand, to smooth it as it goes around the hoop. So you just keep going around the hoop like that, okay, and you're going around. Make sure that the tape stays close to the hoop. That is the key to it, because you'll get all tangled up if you or unroll the tape that far. It'll start getting all tangled, and it'll be frustrated, and then you won't have any fun. Okay? So when my first hoop, the black one that I showed you at the beginning of the video, I didn't know about tape back then. And what I did was I took a sander and I sanded the inside of the hoop. And that added friction. And actually that works even better than tape. But it causes a lot of hoop dust when you're sanding, and it's kind of messy. So the tape does work really well, but if you want to sand it, that's fine too. So you just keep going, and it goes pretty quickly as you go. And then as you get to the end of the taping, you're going to want to take a look at where you're headed, just in case you want it to turn out even. Okay, so I always look ahead and cross my fingers and sort of make it the space between the white tape either smaller or bigger, and adjust what you're doing to actually make it turn out so that you end with the two ends together. And then you cut it. So what I like to do then is I like to take a piece of gaffer's tape just to keep the athletic tape from unwinding on your hoop. And I like to put a piece of gaffer's tape just right here at the seam. That also helps to strengthen the seam. So I like to put it there just right over the area where the athletic tape end comes, and just put it right over that to sort of reinforce and keep it from keep the athletic tape from coming off. Okay, and there you have a hoop with just one color tape on it. If you want two colors, then you can take some more athletic tape in a different color, whatever colors you like. It's all a matter of personal preference. So I'm going to pick red, so we'll make this a red and white hoop. And You do the same thing, basically. You're going to start on the black part of the hoop, okay, rather than the white tape. And you're going to cover all the black on the hoop. Okay, so that's what you're going to do. You're going to start there, and you're just going to go at the same angle as the white tape is, and you're going to go around, and you're going to cover that. Okay, and keep your hand smoothing it as you go, so you don't get any bumps and things like that in it. And just keep going all the way to the end of the hoop. Make sure that you're holding your roll of tape close to the hoop and smoothing with your other hand any bumps or wrinkles or anything that comes into the tape. And just keep moving the hoop as you go. Good. Okay, so you're getting to the end of the hoop, and it's a lot easier to have two colors to wind up correctly, because the first one, if it wound up correctly, then the second one is too. So you don't have to worry so much about that. So we're coming up to the end. And on the white tape, if you remember, I put the red thing around the seam. That's okay if you're just using one color of tape, if we were just going to do the white tape. But since we're adding the red tape, I would not do that on the white tape. I would wait until both colors were wrapped and then put a piece of tape around there to hold them in. So this time I have scissors that work, I think. Yes. Okay. And it came out pretty good there. Okay, so we'll put a piece of red tape on it just to make sure, okay? So I always like to reinforce that and make sure that the red athletic tape does not come off. That end of it sometimes can come loose as you're hooping. So the gaffer's tape protects that. Okay, so there you have a hoop, and it's a red and white hoop. So now you have to try it out and see how it works. Happy hooping!